Hello and welcome to this being my first video tutorial for Affinity by Canva or Affinity 3 depending on what name you want to use. I've been recently doing a lot of written tutorials, and the last one being I was looking at the history panel. So I want to make a video about that using like the written tutorial as my basis. I will add a link to the written tutorial in the description for this video. Now the history panel is found down here in the right hand side, and it is found in the Vector Studio, and if I go to the Layout Studio it is there as well, and the Pixel Studio is similarly down here in the bottom right hand corner. Now I'm going to be using the Pixel Studio mainly because I'm more comfortable with the Pixel Studio, it being more like Affinity Photo, which is what I use more often, but it is available in the other studios. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out this panel, and I'm going to put it around about here somewhere so we can see it a lot easier. And to do that I just need to click on the name and drag it outwards, and then I can increase its size, and I think I can do it sideways. Yes, I can do it sideways as well. So we'll be able to visually see what is happening here. To the same effect, I'm going to pull out the Layers Studio, which is here. So I'm just going to click and drag this out and put it on the other side. I'm going to make this a bit bigger so we can compare the two against each other. So let me just put this back to navigation. I'll leave it like that. Right. So at the moment, in the Layers panel here, there is nothing in it, and in the history panel there is nothing in it, even though I do have this A4 document open. Now when you open a new document, this area you see here is just a visual aid so you know where the document size is. Technically there is nothing there at all, hence why there's no layer in the Layers panel. So the first thing I need to do is sort of add a layer. So down here in the bottom of the Layers panel, if I click on this checkered icon, it will add a blank pixel layer. Now visually nothing is altered because I've got a blank layer on top of a blank visual aid, but now there is actually a layer in the Layers panel, and in the history it's just got add pixel. So what I'm going to do now is fill this blank layer with color. So I'm going to select the fill tool, which is over here in the left hand side. I'll just click on that, and I need to select a color, so I'm going to go for a sort of orange color, and that has filled this with a fluorescent color. And you can see here I've got the color in the Layers panel, and in the history panel I've got set fill. Now this color is a bit too garish, fluorescent, whatever we want to call it, and I want to tone this down a bit. So I'm going to come down slightly in this way. As you can see, the color in the Layers panel is still just one layer, but I've now got two layers in the history because I've changed the color twice. But I will come down, tone this down a bit here, and I've now got a third entry in the history panel, and there's still just one layer. So as you can see, this history panel sort of shows every step that you've taken, whereas the Layers panel just shows you what it looks like at this current time. So what I want to do now is sort of add the Affinity icon. So I'm going to use the place icon tool, whatever I've got it somewhere in here. I always forget where it is. Oh, it's up here. I'll put it second. So the place tool. So I'll click on that and I'll navigate to the Affinity icon, and I've just placed it there, and you can see it has added that into the history and added the image above the colored layer. Now this is too small, so I'm going to resize this. I'm going to hold Control, put the cursor over the corner and make it about that big. So you can see I've now got transform in history panel, but nothing has really changed here in the layers panel. Let me just reposition this, make sure I've got the move tool, and I'm just going to sort of put it about there. And again, the transform has made another entry into the history. So now I want to add a bit of text, and I'm going to come to the artistic text tool, and I'm just going to draw out a size roughly the same size as this icon here. Now I'm going to deliberately misspell this, but I'm going to put in F-I-N-I-T-Y. Affinity. As you can see, it's now put in the history panel, insert Affinity, and we've now got the text layer in the layers panel. So let me just come off of that a second. So now I've just spotted that I've made a misspelling, so I will come back to the text tool, and I'm just going to insert another F in there, and you can see we've now got the insert, just the F in the history panel, and in the layers panel it still just looks like Affinity. So I've now got these two together, and they're roughly the same size, but I was not too happy about its position. I'm just going to move that slightly over to there, and then in the layers panel I'm going to hold Control and click on the Affinity logo. So now both of these are selected, and I will right click here and group those together, and then I will just put it more central like that. So again, in the layers panel I've still only got two items, it being the background and now this group, but yet in the history panel I've got lots of different layers, the last ones being the grouping together and then the transform as in moving them. So now I want to add a shape. I'm going to add a star, so I'm going to go for the double star tool, and I'm going to find the center line because I've got snapping on, which is up here somewhere. It's not quite where I remember it being. Oh, it's over here. In Affinity Photo it was around here somewhere, but it is, the snapping is on. I get this green line for the center vertically and the red line for center horizontally. So I'm going to put it in the center here, hold down the Control and the Shift key, so that the shape I'm drawing out will stay centered, drawn from the center I should say, and it will stay in proportion. So I'm going to put it about there, let go of the mouse button, and that's quite adequate. I think I'll just raise it up slightly. There we go. So it's still centered vertically, but no longer centered horizontally. But again, I've got the add double star here and transform. Again, we've now got just 3 layers in the layers panel. So I'm now going to add a bit more text. Let's come off of that. And I'm going to put about that size, and I'm just going to put, there we go, Xmas sale. And I will center that, and I will just highlight that text, and I'm going to make it a line in the center. So that is sort of, this could be, a roughly finished flyer for a Christmas sale of Affinity. Now, this is where like the history panel sort of starts to really show its power, because if I wanted to, if I didn't like, for example, how things have gone, I could sort of go backwards in the history panel, which would be harder to do than in the layers panel. So let's go like back to the double star, for example. If I wanted to go back to that point, or before that point, I need to be on the transform layer. If I just click on that, it will go back and ignore everything that's come after that point. But if I go back to the end here, again, you can do this from this slider up here on the top. So you can just go back through all the different changes that you've made and sort of start from this point. So if I wanted, for example, to change the star, and we will go for, rather than the double star tool, I'll go for just a normal star tool. Again, I'll come to the middle vertical line, hold Control and Shift, draw out a star like that, and as you can see, everything that was after that point has disappeared in the history panel, but it's added to the end of this transform layer that precedes this new star that I've just put on. Is what looks like a sort of a small H with an arrow on the end, and this is called the cycle future, and it's like a timeline split. So I'm now going to I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'm just going to change the color of this star. So we'll do that with the fill, and I'll make it a sort of bright yellow, and let me close that. I'll come to the layers panel. I'm going to add some effects to this layer, and I'm going to move that away so I can see it. I'm going to make this a bit more 3D, so we're going to pump that up there. Bit of ambient lighting and just soften that. So I've added some effects, so which again has been added. All these different changes I've made in the effects panel have been added here. Now I'm going to again add text, and this time I'm going to do Christmas in the right way. Christmas sale, and again I'm going to align this in the center. I'm going to change the text. Now I'm going to make this easier by starting to write Christmas, so I'm going to go with Christmas Nordic, and I'm going to increase the size to, let's try 96. Come back to the move tool and center this in the middle. So now I've got a sort of totally different sale brochure, pamphlet, whatever, and if I then decide, well, I don't like this so much, I might prefer the other one, I can go back and find that sort of cycle future and then click on that, and it will go back to the other version. And if I click on it again, it will go back to the second version. So I can sort of swap between the two and say, do I prefer that version or do I prefer this? And if I prefer sort of this version but with a different star, I could go in and edit it, if I wanted this star, for example. So this is quite how the history panel works, and it should, in the layers panel, when I click on this, it should also change over here in the layers panel to the different options. So that is sort of how the history panel works, And if I come back down to here, which is where the text is, I could change the text again. Let me align that, go back to there. If I didn't like that particular Christmas text that I selected, I could select this and try a different font. So let's see what we've got in the Christmas type things. We've got Christmas tree font, and I can then increase that size and let's try something a bit bigger than 96. Let's try 110 or 120 I've typed, and come to the move tool, center that, and now we got 2 cycle futures. So I really don't know how many of these sort of branches in the timeline you can add. I mean, I've added 2, so I could go back to that version, and then from this one I can swap between the different changes I made. If it let me, won't let me. I'm not sure why, but it's not letting me change. It's not changing visually, but it is changing here in the history. Very strange. If I go back to that one. So maybe it is only the one change you can make, not something I tested in the written version. But maybe I did something wrong along the way, and you can make more than one timeline. But looking at the help files, as you can see here, we got for the logos that are on the history, because if we go down here on the left hand side, we got this logo that is on every layer. On here it says the set undo brush source, enabling the icon precedes an entry to set the chosen source from which the undo brush can paint back to. Now this is something I've never tested, and if you are going to use the undo brush, I'm guessing it works in conjunction with the history panel. And then obviously got this cycle future icon, which it says appears on states where history changed, storing edits in a timeline branch. Selecting the cycle future icon next to a state to return to a branch. You can click this again to toggle between the different series of edits you made beyond this point. It doesn't, again, like I said, it doesn't say whether there's a limit to the amount of cycle futures you can have. Now, also in the history, up here in the right of the panel, there's this V or downward arrow. If you click on that, you get these 4 options, and again, it tells you here what these will do. And the only one that's really important as far as I can see, and if I go back to this, if I click on the advanced, the view of the history panel will change, as you will get the different visual icons down here, but also it will tell you when the changes were made, date and time, and what the effect was, like set the effect or insert letters and whatever it is. And then you have on the right the cycle future icons and the undo brush source icons. They just sort of swapped around, but I'll put it back to its more normal default settings. So basically, really, that is it. The history panel just sort of shows what you have done, whereas the levels panel shows you in a more limited way what the different layers are and what the end result is. Now the only thing about, with the history, if you come to File, you've got Save with History. So before you save a file using Save As, if you put a tick on, or you click on that Save with History, you'll get a panel where you have to say yes or no. You click on yes. If you go back to Save with History, there's now a tick on that. So then when you use Save As, it will save the history as well as all the layers, the colors, and what have you. It will make the file size bigger, especially if you've done loads and loads, especially if you're like in the Vector Studio and you've drawn a picture, you will have like hundreds, if not thousands of layers. So that history panel will be quite big, and make the file bigger. So last thing I'll do is I'll just put these back. So if I go to the name of the panel, click on it, drag it backwards until it sort of fits in where I want it, let go, and it will be there. And same with the layers, I will put that back there so they're back where I want them to be. So that is it. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.